Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Cabinet on Monday, the 10th of January, 2022. Happy New Year to those who I haven't had the chance to greet at this part of the year. Got a good agenda today, so we'll crack straight on with item 1, which is the minutes of the previous meeting held on Monday, the 15th of November, 2021, containing pages 4 to 14. Our Cabinet colleagues happy that they're true and accurate record. Thank you very much indeed. Apologies for absence. Lovely, thank you, Teresa. Item 3, urgent business. I haven't got any. I'm made aware of any. Item 4, declarations of interest. Any member who's got a declaration of interest pertinent to their declarations already on the website, just make us aware when we get to that item. Item 5, non-members wishing to address the meeting. Good morning, you're most welcome. Item 6, chairman's announcements. I haven't got any. Item 7, Breckland Community Funding Application. Councillor Webb, please.
Thank you, Leader. There are no Inspiring Communities grant applications this month as the scheme is closed. Thank you, currently.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor Webb. And we'll move on to item 8 then, which is the key performance indicator. Councillor Robinson to present, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'm really happy to bring forward the proposed indicator list to the Cabinet today. Officers across all service areas have undertaken a review of our current performance measures in light of the Council agreeing a new corporate plan. And this will be one of the ways the Council provides updates to how it is performing against what it is set out to do with these indicators. We have sought feedback from Overview and Scrutiny Committee as part of this process to ensure that there is agreement that what we plan to report is fair and reflective of the Council's work. At this point, I'd just like to hand over to Ryan Pack, who will bring to your attention certain elements of the report.
Thank you, Councillor. As Councillor Robinson's alluded to, we've taken this to Overview and Scrutiny to get their feedback on it, and that went through at the last meeting. We've revised these indicators over the last few months with all the officers, and ultimately we'll bring it to you to say, I know there's an issue with the recommendation where it says about the Commission adopting it, but we'd be asking that the Cabinet adopt this so we can begin reporting for Q1. The only additional things which I've got to add are a comment at Overview and Scrutiny was about reporting the actuals as well as the percentages, which essentially I think we will do, but it'll be moving forward. It'll be where it's appropriate, so we don't just double the amount of indicators we have for duplication. And there were just a few tweaks to the list which went to Overview and Scrutiny, which should be now reflected in the Cabinet report. So I'm obviously happy to take any questions.
Lovely, thank you. Questions or comments from colleagues, please. Councillor Hewitt.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Councillor Robinson. To my mind, we've still got a very long list of key performance indicators, but I do accept the fact that this list has been reduced quite considerably. I'm grateful actually in terms of the feedback that's being received both from AOC but also from other members who have expressed comments and views throughout. I think this is a good working list, but I would remind everyone that these are key performance indicators rather than data. They're a call for action and response first and foremost. And from that perspective, I'm happy to agree with the list. Thanks, Chair.
Lovely, thanks. I've got Councillor Sherwood, then Councillor Burt, then Councillor Jeremy, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'd also like to add, I'd like to thank Mark and the team for the work that's been done on this. It's a balance, really. We've got to be aware of what the KPIs are, and we need to monitor those. And as Councillor Hewitt has said, it's a matter of they're an indicator, exactly what the word says. The data's there should we need it behind the system. So I'd like to thank you for that, and thank you for the work that's done, because I think it will be extremely helpful to us all. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Burt.
Thank you, Chairman. I think you've already alluded to this actually in that comment I was going to make was that this appears to be a copy and paste from the OSC agenda, and therefore you've indicated the recommendation is wrong and needs modifying, but we've also got just copied and pasted the original list of KPIs. So the question would be what you're actually voting to agree here, because it's not, as I understood it from the comments from Overview and Scrutiny, the list has been slightly modified, well, significantly modified in the sense of exactly what is being reported, but that's not what is in the agenda.
Councillor Robinson, please.
I'm going to refer back to the comments that Ryan made slightly earlier. We've taken into account the comments that came forward from overview and scrutiny, and going forward, they will form part of the indicators that we measure.
Councillor Burt, you indicated again.
Yeah, it's really that's not what it actually says in the agenda pack. So what I'm asking for is, what are you as cabinet going to be actually voting for? It should be in black and white, perhaps, as to these are the indicators and this is how we're going to operate them. Whereas that's not what it says in the agenda.
Ryan, did you want to respond?
Yeah, essentially, so overview and script, cabinet ultimately have to set the indicators. So I apologise, obviously, with the confusion on the recommendations. We took them to overview and scrutiny for feedback. We took that feedback. We have tweaked them based on that feedback. For example, under IT, previously we were just reporting on the unscheduled downtime. We're now reporting on scheduled and unscheduled downtime. And then ultimately we have to bring that to the cabinet to formally agree. So apologies for the recommendation, but that's ultimately why we brought that today.
Thank you, Councillor Jeremy.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry to harp on about this, but mine was on a similar point. We had a fairly light agenda at scrutiny in December, so we actually had a really good look at this particular item. And a number of members made a number of really good points, actually, about how we might be able to amend the indicators to actually give us best value, because taking on board the point, we don't want a huge list, but actually we want points that are really good value. And I'm disappointed, actually, that those points haven't been incorporated into the document. This does seem to be a carbon copy of what was presented to scrutiny, and the points that were made haven't been reflected. I made a number of points about the specific one about fly tipping. The document at the moment says that fly tipping investigations with a successful outcome are recorded. But what would be particularly useful is a continuation of what we already have, which is a logging of the number of fly tipping incidents and the tonnage. I wonder if perhaps obviously you've got to agree to the recommendation or not today, but whatever you decide, Ryan's alluded to the fact that actually this does need to be updated. If at some point when that happens, that document could be circulated to members, just so that we have confidence that the points that we made at scrutiny have in fact been taken on board, because we don't want to lose that really good discussion that we had, because we want a good list going forward.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Councillor. I sort of understand the point you're trying to make. Essentially, with that feedback and those points, these were the indicators we want to record, but stuff like that, we'd be trying to capture in the written commentary of it. And essentially, I think what's happened is that we've kept these, but I haven't properly reflected that conversation in this. It's part of the reason, well, I wasn't in the meeting, so I had to watch it online. But yeah, I do understand where you're coming from, and where appropriate, we'll try and contextualize some of those things in the commentary. I have got that list, and I will look to incorporate it, but the specific indicators are what we're just trying to agree. So apologies for that confusion.
Anything else, Councillor? No. So just on response to Councillor Hewitt's comments, Councillor Robinson, about action and response, how are you as the cabinet member going to ensure that cabinet colleagues have oversight and that understand, rather than it just being at the commission level and then shared quarterly with cabinet colleagues, how are you going to ensure that cabinet colleagues across the whole of the 86 services which we provide to the 113 across local government, that we've got to understand that where some of our challenges but also opportunities are?
Thank you, Leader. It's quite a simple thing for us to do as cabinet members. As you know, this has been formed with your assistant directors, and this will be regularly fed in. The concerns, the opportunities will be fed in with your ADs, and we'd expect you, within your portfolio briefs, to be picking this up and addressing those matters. I probably haven't explained that as clearly as I would like to have done, but I know exactly where I was going with that.
Thank you, Councillor Hewitt.
And just, I think, to reflect on that, my understanding is there are somewhat 220 performance indicators that sit beneath these key performance indicators. I also, and I take Ryan's point on board, which is that this is not a definitive restrictive list. I would anticipate, as the council moves over the next year or two, that this list is an organic list that itself points and directs to the steps that we need to take in order for our residents and our businesses to thrive. I support it.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor Hewitt. Councillor Borrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just really wanted to support this. I think that given the huge list of performance indicators that sits under the key performance indicators that are reflected in today's report, it just shows how open and transparent Breckland Council is. And I think the desire for lay people and the residents of Breckland to be able to see in a snapshot that's going to be regularly coming to Cabinet how the various departments performing is something that I absolutely welcome, and I applaud Breckland for being so open and transparent about its performance. So I absolutely support this report.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor Borrett. So, Councillor Robinson, I can't see any further questions. So if you'd like to move the recommendation, which is as per the agenda pack, where the recommendation wording just needs to be altered to reflect that it's not the Commission, it's Cabinet is recommending the proposed indicators for adoption.
Thank you. So the recommendation is members of the Cabinet are to recommend the proposed indicators for adoption by Cabinet.
Gremlin systems in the day today, sorry everyone. Is it Cabinet colleagues happy with those recommendations? Thank you very much. That's then moved. Let's move to item 9 then, which is the draft budget setting, medium-term financial plan and capital strategy for 22-23. Councillor Cowan to present, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Since the pandemic struck, officers of this council have undertaken tasks and performed roles that would have been unthinkable in the not too distant past. But as a council, we've pulled together to maintain service delivery whilst dealing with unprecedented events. A key part of the service delivery has been to ensure that our finances are sound, that our budgeting meets the needs of our core objectives, and that residents and businesses alike are supported to the best of our abilities. The draft budget, medium-term plan and capital strategy that is before us today is testament to all the diligent work that Team Breckland has undertaken and built upon prudent fiscal management that I've been reporting for the past 2 years. You have before you a simple recommendation today that the draft capital and revenue budget estimates, the draft medium-term financial plan and the draft capital strategy are reviewed in preparation for the final budget setting in February 2022. In summary, I would draw your attention to the following key points. We have produced a balanced budget against continued uncertainty around government funding, potential central policies and fees and charging income streams, but we have proposed an increase in council tax for a Band D property of £4.95 per annum. This modest increase enables us to maintain services, deliver on our core strategies and initiatives, and support residents and businesses, and we are still the lowest taxing district in the country. Following this Cabinet meeting, the draft budget will be presented to OSC later this month, before the final budget proposals are put before full council in February. Looking ahead, whilst the papers before you reflect the draft local government settlement, they are relatively silent on future trends, but there is no doubt that we shall face challenges in the future as a result of widely trailed central government policies surrounding, for example, recycling provision. Similarly, there is a significant risk associated with the non-domestic rate and its reset that will change the baseline funding level, and the team has identified this risk in the budget preparations as having an impact in either years 22-23 or more likely, we hope, 23-24. At present, there is no suggestion of an imminent fair funding review, although it is anticipated that this will hit us in the fiscal year 25-26. Government has provided a further £830,000 of new homes bonus and that has been posted into the Inclusive Growth Reserve to enable us to maintain delivery of objectives and programmes. As a result of the continuing impact of COVID-19, we have amended and refined our efficiency requirements and have developed the Evolve programme that will help to offset the anticipated budget deficits in the immediate future. And these are all enunciated on page 24 of the pack before you today. With regard to the capital programme, there is an identified need to borrow over the medium term, but this is offset through the repayment mechanism in the waste contract. Thus, the borrowing requirement is in effect nil. We do face risks, and these have been articulated as follows. The non-domestic rate reset has a potential impact of 1.229 million per year, hopefully starting in years 25-26. The Environment Bill has a potential impact of £1.5 to £3.5 million per annum. We face issues in recovering housing benefit through the migration of clients of ARP to universal credit. And we are facing a benchmarking review within the PFI scheme. Details are all contained in the appendices attached to these papers, and Alison is sitting behind me today to assist in answering any detailed questions. And she's not bad at doing that, I have to say. To conclude, this draft budget is based on the following principles. Firstly, Breckland has no reliance on New Homes Bonus funding. Breckland can and will maintain service delivery. Breckland will continue to invest in our priorities, and those are thriving places, our Breckland 2035 climate initiative, working smarter, and inspiring communities. Breckland has reserves that will be used to provide financial support for projects that lead to growth and investment and/or achieve savings. Breckland has put in place an achievable efficiencies programme to assist in the management of future funding changes and financial risks. Breckland has also increased the Council Tax Hardship Fund by a further £35,000 this year, bringing it to £100,000. However, we're not making any future contributions to reserves or capital that means once depleted, funding new initiatives will require new grant funding or reallocation from elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Ali, anything to add? No, thank you. Questions and comments from colleagues, please. I've got Councillor Suggett, then Councillor Hewitt, then Councillor Sherwood, please.
Oh, sorry.
So, right, thank you, Chair. I'm sure we all know it's no mean feat at the best of times to present an affordable and balanced budget. However, credit should be given for what's presented today, as despite the difficult and challenging times we're still experiencing, this budget not only shows no planned reduction in services, but demonstrates this council's commitment of putting our residents at the forefront by continuing to invest through our thriving places, inspiring communities, climate programme and vulnerability agenda, all of which are ambitious projects that we can all be proud of. So thank you, Phil, and everyone's team for doing that this morning.
Thank you, Sarah. I think it's very important that we focus on the reasons that the electorate have put us in this place. And that is to provide good, sound fiscal management over time, which we're doing, but more importantly, managing the finances that we have in such a way that provides them with all the support that they need. And that support has never been needed more in these trying times that we're facing at the moment. And yes, in answer to the asked question, it would be really nice not to increase council tax. I have no doubt about that. If it was down to me, I wouldn't want to do it. But actually, I take the view that we have other priorities which we need to focus on for vast numbers of the people in this district. And those that Councillor Suggett has just identified, the vulnerable in our community, inspiring our communities, helping to build back our communities in order to be able to deal with the effects of COVID and take us forward into the next phase of Breckland and its life. I think it's vital that our young people are supported. They have suffered probably more so than the vast majority of residents that we have in the district. And importantly, we need to support our businesses. And this budget, I believe, enables us to do all of those things and hopefully more. And it has to be said, credit to the whole team that we've been able to undertake all of this in very difficult times, been able to provide alternative means of working to enable the staff to function efficiently, and also position us in a place where colleagues such as Councillor Hewitt are going to be able to make more use of the building stock that we have to drive additional revenue in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Councillor Hewitt.
It feels like a nice lead in, Phil. Thank you very much. I have to say, just echoing Councillor Suggett's comment there, I mean, budget setting in good times is complex, particularly in organisations such as ours. But budget setting currently, you refer to the uncertainty in the marketplace, we refer to moving targets, we refer to changing legislation, changing government financial grants and so on and so forth. It is immensely challenging. And I just echo Councillor Suggett's comment to you and your team for pulling out not just a budget, but a balanced budget in the medium term. And a balanced budget that on the one hand reflects the reality that with inflation currently running at 5%, we are still managing to cut our cloth in order to meet the needs of our residents, our businesses, but our more vulnerable residents as well. But equally a budget, and you did refer to it briefly, that reflects the fact that actually, and I see in particular some of our cost management issues over the next 3-4 years, some of the investments that we've made quite recently in areas such as WorkSmart, in terms of invest to save, are actually now seeing, in budget terms at least, the benefits for our taxpayers to make sure that they get the best bang for their investment in us and our promises that we make to them. Congratulations still to the team. Congratulations very much in terms of presenting a budget that is balanced and is very, I would say, cautiously optimistic for the future.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hewitt. Your final words are quite important. When we look at the detail behind the figures that are in the papers in front of us, it is quite clear that in the years 23 to 26, we will be facing fairly difficult times. And that is why this budget positions us in a place where we should be able to take advantage of those months, a couple of years, in order to be able to build ourselves into a very strong position. Without doing that, it would be even more challenging than it seems to be at the moment. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sherwood.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to start, Phil, with 3 T's, and they are 3 thank yous. 3 thank yous to you and your team for presenting this budget. A thank you to our officers across the whole of the council who've worked exceedingly hard during 2 very challenging years and have achieved savings and worked hard to ensure we can present this budget. The third T, the third thank you, is from me on behalf of my residents in Swaffham and across Breckland. We will have the lowest council tax in Norfolk, possibly the lowest council tax in the country. And I think it's important to remember that though that is one catchphrase, the other catchphrase and the other things that have been said is how our front services, our frontline services have been maintained and enhanced. A 4th thank you for enabling us to have funds to finance a green agenda and look at what was important to the residents. We've managed to do that, find that money still within this budget. It's important to remember when you get your council tax bill that it's not just Breckland Council. Breckland Council, in some cases, will be the smallest part on that council tax bill. It's difficult for all councils. So I understand the challenges that Norfolk County Council has, and they provide good value services. We also have the police authority, and we also have the parish. And it's important to remember that the parish part of the precept across Breckland, the average parish precept is equal to, and in some cases higher than what we charge as a district council. So thank you, Phil. 4 thank yous in the end. And I'm happy to go forward to my residents with this recommendation because I know we give them good value for service, and we have provided, Breckland has provided good value for its residents. I get complimented on that. And when I get emails from residents, it's nice to be able to provide the services and the grants that they want and need. The way we have supported the community has been exceptional. I'm proud to be part of that. So thank you, Phil, and I will support your recommendation.
Thank you, Ian. And I think it was probably me that coined the phrase Team Breckland some time ago during the pandemic. And I really mean that. This is a team effort. And it's not just officers and the cabinet, it's actually the whole council. And as everyone in this room will appreciate, it isn't just us as the Conservative Party as the ruling party. This budget was also described and taken to our opposition members earlier. When was it? Just before Christmas, I think, Terry. And I believe it will engender support for all of the reasons that you have quoted. And in order to just perhaps put a bit of flesh on the bones that you've described there, Ian, about the residents who support you, for every council tax band D player, they get £753 worth of services delivered for what will be around about £100 of cost. So that's not a bad return on that investment. And of course, if we look below band D, it's significantly higher in terms of return because our band A, B and C residents pay significantly less. Thank you.
Lovely, thanks, Phil. I've got Councillor Burt, Councillor Jeremy, then Councillor Borrett, please.
Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, I've got Councillor Webb. I didn't see her indication. Sorry, Councillor Burt.
Okay, right, following Ian, I just wanted to say from my side and my portfolio, thank you, Phil, and Alison, of course, and the team. The Inspiring Communities portfolio, the work that we're doing following the COVID challenge over the last 2 years, the difference it's made to our communities is absolutely, inspiring communities, what can I say? Without this structure, without this funding, things would have to stop, things that we don't want to stop, things that are benefiting our communities greatly. So from my heart, I really thank you. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks. Sorry, Councillor Burt, Councillor Jeremy, then Councillor Borrett, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll probably drill down into the detail of this when it comes to overview and scrutiny, but just a couple of questions, please, for today, just on sort of the overall framework. So on page 34, the key assumptions table, I note that the cost of living increase is stated to be 2%. This seems particularly low, especially considering that we've got a 1.25 national insurance contribution increase in April. And as we've already heard from Councillor Hewitt, inflation is running at 5%. So why are we setting that at 2%? And is that going to have any consequences for our staff in terms of pay rises so to keep pace with inflation? Do you want to do that one at a time? Or
if you box them together, Councillor Bird, if you've got a couple,
okay.
that'd be great. Thank you.
So completely separate issue, page 41, if I may. I'm looking at the tax base and the increase over time. So the tax base along the bottom of the table. I've got the right place. So from columns 3 to 4 and onwards, we seem to be increasing the tax base by around about 300, but that doesn't really stack up with our requirement to build sort of 612 properties per year. So I'm trying to understand why our tax base isn't increasing at the rate at which we would be expecting to build houses. Now, I think there might be a couple of reasons that maybe the houses don't actually net us an increase in council tax, but I'd like to understand why that is occurring, because if it's that we're not going to be building enough houses, that could lead us into a further problem. And just back onto page 28. I mean, this has been included lots of times, and this is a comment more than anything else. I mean, keep hearing about lowest council tax, but even that table is only the lowest council tax, only the lowest district council tax. If you group everything together, we're not even the lowest in Norfolk. And I don't want us to misrepresent where we are. We are low, but we are not the lowest.
Is that it, Councillor Burke? Thank you. Well, I'll take the last one first. We are the lowest district council taxing authority in Norfolk. You can't pick and choose and do a sort of old-fashioned Woolworths pick and mix in your sweetie box. This is the reality of running a local government in Norfolk. We, as Breckland district, are the lowest district council taxing authority. That's unequivocal, and I think everyone needs to understand that. When it comes to your first point about cost of living, I'm going to defer shortly to Alison, because obviously our accountancy team put all these figures together in detail. But it is not the government's intention, nor the Bank of England's intention, that interest rates stay at 5% or higher. The government and Bank of England are doing what they can to restrict interest rates to 2%. They peaked at 2%, they'd like to keep them lower. But unfortunately, sometimes worldwide events take a step in the wrong direction, and that causes one or two problems. So we'll come back to Alison for the detail on the cost of living increase, as we will, I'm afraid, on the tax base, because I'll be absolutely honest, I don't know why, when we have a target of X hundred homes, why our tax base doesn't go up that much. There must be some very sensible answers, but as I have a team behind me who actually put those figures together, I will defer to Alison. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you. So on the cost of living, those are assumptions. That is exactly what they are in the budget. The pay rise for staff is settled locally and is around March, April time each year. So that will be discussed next year as normal. Sorry, this year now as normal. The tax base is twofold. Not every house equates to one equivalent band D. The majority are slightly less. And the other thing is that they're not all built on day one, the 1st of April each year. So we take an average and say that half of them will be built on day one, if you like, to average it over the year. So it's still based on 600 odd houses being built, but we take an average point of half of it.
Lovely, thank you. Follow-up question, Councillor Bird.
Yeah, that's on the tax base, because I'm still slightly mystified, because if we're taking half at the beginning of the first year, then surely the second half would appear in the next year. And that doesn't appear to be the case in the columns going forward. You know, the later columns on the sheet. We seem to be increasing by a tax base by 300 in successive years. So I'm still slightly mystified on this.
Yeah, that goes back to the other point that not every house is a band D. So 76% of our houses are band A, B or C. So they don't equate to one. They only equate to a smaller amount. So it's like I say, the twofold.
Chairman, if I can, unfortunately, the rules around which we report are all focused on band D properties, whether that's the band D council tax rate or in fact the tax base. And when we have 76% of residents in under band D, it has a disproportionate skew on the numbers. And it's as simple as that. I guess I'm not a mathematician, but I can understand why the figures are skewed in that way. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Ali and Councillor Cowan. Councillor Jeremy, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I've got three points on the revenue budget, if I may, and then a separate one on the capital budget. First, just to say thank you to Alison and Phil, because as they alluded to, they did give us as opposition group leaders a briefing before Christmas, which is always very much appreciated. Phil's alluded to the council tax support grant that's available. Council tax is increasingly becoming difficult for residents. The elephant in the room is very much that the burden to fund local council services is falling more to a greater extent on local residents than the government. And that's why that grant scheme is so crucial. I mean, Breckland alone has seen a 43% increase in its share of the council tax in the last 5 years. It's nearly a third for Norfolk County Council, and given they are such a significant portion of the overall council tax bill, that's £400 alone more for a Band D in Norfolk for a resident. And then obviously we've got the other ones included. So I am very pleased that we're topping up the hardship grant scheme, because it's absolutely crucial to support those residents in need. Seeing as we are continuing it, I would ask the Cabinet member if we could look to review how it's working to make sure we are supporting the right people. This was a new initiative this current financial year, and I think it's important that we review it moving forward. I still come across a huge number of residents who are struggling financially but are still having to pay for their council tax, completely unaware that this council has a hardship fund. So I'm very pleased that we're continuing it, but let's please review it. And also bearing in mind, I mean, I know it's important that we highlight that, certainly for you guys, that Breckland has the lowest district council tax in the country, but we also have an issue with low wages in this district, you know, proportionate to the rest of the country. In work poor is a significant issue. More people use Thetford Food Bank that are in work than out of work. That tells you the issue with low wages that we have. The second point I wanted to make was around food waste. Now, we know that food waste collections are coming. It seems frustrating, to say the least, that at a time of food poverty, which is a real issue, we are, as a district and as a country, putting a significant amount of perfectly good food in the bin. As I drove in this morning, I was listening to the radio talking about Morrison's, which are now removing the best before date from milk. Absolutely brilliant. I never look at the best before date on my milk. If it tastes all right, I drink it. I think we could be doing an awful lot more as a district to reduce the amount of perfectly good food going into our bins. And if we are moving to a point where food waste collections are coming, now is the time to start doing that. Let's start educating people about the difference between best before and use by, and how they can use their scraps, and stop perfectly good food going into the bins. And Councillor Sherwood spoke about the green agenda. I would like to see this coming financial year's budget doing more to address food waste now, rather than waiting to years down the line when food waste collections come in. So that's a sort of plea from me. The last point is around, on the revenue budget, is around public lighting. To its credit, Breckland has been investing in its share of public lighting across the district. Some of you will know that each year I do a nighttime audit of streetlights in Borough Ward. Yes, I really do have that fun of a life. And every year for the last 6-7 years, Breckland's always come out on top of the majority of lights which are broken. For the first year ever, last week when we did it, that changed. Actually, the vast majority of the lights that were broken and faulty were Norfolk County Council's. Breckland's been investing in its street lighting stock and upgrading to LED, that actually they are failing less and they are working as they should be. And that's the first time ever, so it's a compliment. I'm not clear from the documents where we are at with the street lighting upgrade, because there are still a number of very old Breckland street lights, certainly in Thetford, and you drive around, and they do tend to be the ones that break. So I'd like some sort of reassurance that we are continuing to get that done as quickly as we possibly can, frankly, because it saves money, it's better for the environment, and who knows, maybe when I go around in the future, I won't find any broken Breckland lights, but I'll be sure to let you know. Chairman, do you want me to do the capital one now, or do you want me to pause there and come back to the capital one?
No, keep going, Councillor Jeremy.
So I'm just finding the relative appendix. I think it's the last one on the capital programme document that's attached. And the very last table No, the table before last, let me find it, there we are. Then it says forecast capital receipts. And very handily, all of the different receipts there are detailed, apart from the two in the middle, which says asset sale and asset sale. No idea what the asset is, but it's absolutely crucial to the capital programme, because if you look at the amounts, we're talking about 2.5 million pounds. One, is there a reason we're not being told what that asset is, please? Paul's nodding his head, so I assume there is. And also, given it's so crucial to the capital programme, is there a risk there that if that asset sale doesn't go ahead, that capital programme is put in jeopardy, because you're getting the money, a significant portion of the forecast receipts? How are we going to match that with the expenditure if that asset sale doesn't go ahead, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cowan.
Thanks, Terry. So the first point you made, I quite agree. There's little point in introducing new initiatives of whatever kind if we don't review them. And frankly, that's what the OSC is really there to do. Yes, we should do it as well, but actually I'd much rather it was member-led in that sense. And yes, I note that, and I'm sure colleagues have as well. Your second point, well, it was a kind of a mixed series of second points, really. I couldn't agree more. Breckland is a low-wage economy, and that's precisely why we're working as hard as we are as a council to invest in the district, to encourage new jobs, higher wage jobs, different types of industry to come into the district. It's the sort of thing we've been doing around Snetterton with our power upgrades. It's what we've been doing in Thetford to bring additional power into Thetford, because without the demands that the industry has for power and the availability of it, then we're going to be stuck as a low-wage economy. And this council's recognised that very early on and is doing what it can, working both as a council with partners, with central government, to drive that funding initiative forward, to lever in additional cost to enable us to bring those sorts of businesses into the district, which will help to address that. That's not a quick fix. It can't be a quick fix, but we are doing what we can in order to achieve it, which is why we're very keen to continue to support those on low wages. There's no doubt about that at all. Food waste, again, if I cast my mind back, because as you, I've probably been on this council the same length of time, and I can always recall people talking about food waste and how it's what a travesty it is. In fact, this council for many, many years has been resisting food waste collections because we've been trying to get the message out that you shouldn't waste food in the first place. It's a very precious commodity. So yes, in answer to your question, I'm sure that Sarah and the new Serco team and the contract they have will be doing what they can to encourage people to be less wasteful. But unfortunately, there will come a time when we will be facing additional costs, because central government's made it very clear in the Environment Bill that they want to change attitudes across the country. Unfortunately, it'll be a one-size-fits-all solution. And when we sit in a rural district of 500 square miles, I'm still imperial in some ways, at 500 square miles, and having to manage waste collection over that area, it is quite clearly not a cheap or even economical solution. So we will be looking forward to central government helping us with new burdens funding to support whatever initiatives they put forward. But of course, it also underpins why we have a new waste contract, because that waste contract enables us to take advantage of the scale of that operation. So we don't have those artificial boundaries called district boundaries anymore. And waste collection vehicles are able to move across those boundaries in order to deliver an efficient service. The green agenda, well, we are doing what we can do. And if Ian would like to add to that, I'd welcome his response. And thank you for the public lighting. I'm delighted, because I've sat here many, many years now, hearing your wonderful tales of nighttime excursions around Thetford, not being able to see what you're doing because the lights aren't working. I'm so glad that now you're able to look at the Breckland lights and be able to spot the time of day. That's really good news. But I will make sure that colleagues who are responsible for the lighting scheme do manage to give you an update on the upgrade programme. You asked a question finally on capital. Now, you saw my colleague opposite nodding sagely at your suggestion, and the answer is quite right. We have some confidentiality issues which are not unfamiliar to you or to any of us in this room. But I would ask Councillor Hewitt if he wishes to expand on that or not. Thank you.
And if I may just come up straight away, the first of the asset sales, of course, relates to the Green Britain Centre, which we did dispose of last year. As members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Commission, pardon me, who looked in detail at that transaction, were happy. The second is an ongoing commercially sensitive transaction, but I have every confidence, just picking up on your earlier point, that that transaction will be completed within the year in which has been indicated. Just on one final point, I can reassure you we are continuing to get the public lighting upgrade done as quickly as we possibly can, which I think is what you're asking.
Thanks, Councillor Hewitt. And just to expand on a couple of points, just for clarity, 200 lights are left to do across the whole district, Councillor Jeremy. There's 88,000 still in budget, the rest is allocated. So we're nearly there. And don't forget, as much as Councillor Sherwood has his budget allocation around the climate and environment, this was the district investing hundreds of thousands of pounds within this cycle of this council, in which we were bringing our council assets up to energy performance well ahead of everyone else. That Invest to Save programme, as Councillor Hewitt has mentioned several times before. And I know that Councillor Webb has raised with Councillor Suggett and Councillor Sherwood around food waste. She's seen the great work which has been achieved in your locality, in your part of the district, and what is the opportunity for us to expand that across the whole district. And your comments are well noted about getting ourselves ahead of that definite environment bill. And I know that Councillor Suggett and Councillor Sherwood are working through both in the climate and waste as to how we can possibly combat and box it off. So I'm sure they'll be delighted after this meeting to touch base and hear your thoughts and feelings around that. And just on the final piece, Councillor Jeremy, you've been here a long time. It's not usual for us to comment and articulate within reports assets which are disposed of. We can do that through land registry as an independent search, but as Councillor Hewitt mentioned, there was a certain asset which went through the Commission for further detail prior to disposal. Councillor Borwick, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. I would like to endorse this report and to look at the very solid financial foundations on which Breckland Council operates. And this is not always the case with local authorities within the county. Before I get on to my main point, I just wanted to reflect on something that Councillor Jeremy said, that council tax is, and the quote was, council tax is difficult for residents. I absolutely agree with that. And if looking at the table on page 28, you'll see that the Breckland proposed Band D council tax is £98.73. But that in the Labour controlled City Council is £274.74, nearly 3 times the rate. Now I have to be fair, because the Breckland one doesn't include the parish precepts, and of course Norwich City Council isn't parished, but that would suggest that if they were directly comparable, that the average parish would be charging double what Breckland is charging in order to make a direct comparison between the two. Councillor Cowan has already mentioned that the level of service or the spend per head in the district councils is broadly the same, and that actually Breckland residents do not suffer from a reduction in the services offered as a result of having such an efficient and low council tax. So I think, the best present we can give our residents is their own money, in that we're not taking it, to provide them with a level of service that is comparable across other authorities. Councillor Burt was trying to confuse the issue. That table is clear and unequivocal. Breckland Council is the least expensive of all the Norfolk authorities. What I really wanted to talk about was the strategy, aspirations and forward projections, and just pick out some of the key things that have underpinned the Cabinet's approach to this budget. manage and use our resources to deliver value for money and better sustainable outcomes for local people. Prepare robust and realistic income and resource requirement plans for the next 4 years. Promote take-up of benefits and reliefs. Maximise income collection and grant funding from alternative service areas, and recognise our role in the community by providing assistance to individuals, groups and businesses. And I think those, I've just picked out some from the list of 13, but I think they give a very clear idea of where this budget's coming from and what the goals and aspirations of Breckland Council are. And as a member of this council, I'm extremely proud that Breckland is approaching the sound financial management in this way. So I heartily endorse this report, Mr. Chairman.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor Borrett. No other questions from Cabinet colleagues. Just a vote of thanks. I know that there has been several from Cabinet colleagues today to you, Phil, and team, but for me as the leader, to the Chief Executive and all the officers of Breckland District Council, and to you as Cabinet colleagues, you have worked diligently over these preceding months to ensure that we are once again able to deliver a balanced budget in the most austere and difficult times we've faced through a national and international pandemic. The financial settlement arrived as it normally does in late December, whilst we're already forming our assumptions, and the assumptions are presented, and as Councillor Cowan mentioned, those risks are clear to be seen in the future. But Breckland has driven those efficiencies over the lifetime of this council cycle. Millions for our previous transformation programme. Once again, the Investor Save programme is presented again today. But of course, protecting frontline services, as Councillor Cowan said, and thank you for making sure that we are protecting those who are still in greatest need. And once again, that was proven through the pandemic that we stood up our own independent hardship fund of tens of thousands of pounds, which we were able to pivot overnight to ensure that those who needed access and support were able to do so. And I think our legacy through these performance is listed quite rightly there, as you said, inspiring our communities, protecting those who are most vulnerable, lifting those aspirations, driving forward our economy, learning what we have through the last 24 months through the pandemic, ensuring that we are proud of our environment and doing everything we can to drive Breckland forward so that it's a place for residents and businesses to thrive. I know that you're presenting this back to the Commission later on in the early part of this year, and I know that you'll invite Cabinet colleagues along as and when required. But to me, to the organisation, Maxine, and to Cabinet colleagues, thank you for your hard work. I know you've had to do a lot of difficult soul searching around how you are delivering those efficiency savings to ensure that we protected frontline services, and the budget presented today in draft form reflects that hard work for us as a Conservative council moving forward. So thank you, and I'm happy to take your recommendations for the draft budget, Councillor.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you indeed. There's one recommendation, I spelled it out earlier, that the draft capital and review budget estimates, the draft medium-term financial plan and the draft capital strategy are reviewed in preparation for the final budget setting in February 2022. Move that recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. Cabinet colleagues indicate those all approval. Thank you, that's unanimous. That's then moved. Let's move on to item 11, which is the local council tax reduction scheme for 22-23. Councillor Cowan to present again, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The local council tax reduction scheme. Each year, the council is required to review its local council tax reduction support scheme, LCTRS. And this is the 9th year that Breckland has reviewed the local scheme following the nationally set level back in 2013. Over the 9 years, we have modified the scheme from time to time, and members will recall that last year, no changes were made. However, this year we are proposing some modifications, and these are contained within the proposal to council in the recommendation at the head of this report. There are 4 of them. The first, a reduction in the capital threshold, is intended to support those most in need, as noted in paragraph 2.3. In proposal 2, we recommend a fixed deduction of £7.40 for the reasons explained in paragraph 3. Thirdly, we recommend a simplification of the application process, as enunciated in paragraph 4. And finally, proposal 4 recommends increasing the income variance from £65 to £100. before a need to reassess applications. The rationale behind this is discussed in paragraphs 5 and following. The proposals have been consulted upon, and the results of those consultations have helped to shape what we have before us. If there are any detailed questions that we are unable to answer today, we will ask Adrian Mills, Head of ARP, to respond. Unfortunately, he can't be with us today due to a clash in meetings within ARP. Thus, in the meantime, I propose that Cabinet recommends to full council the proposed changes to Breckland Council's local council tax reduction scheme 22-23 as follows: reducing the capital threshold from £16,000 to £10,000 and abolishing tariff income, introducing a fixed rate reduction of £7.40 for non-dependents, further streamlining the claim process, and increasing the tolerance for universal credit data reassessments from £65 a month to £100 a month. Thank you, Chairman.
Lovely, thank you. Alison, anything to add? Thank you. Questions or comments from colleagues, please? I've got Councillor Robinson, then Councillor Hewitt, then Councillor Jeremy, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Phil, for this report. I just particularly wanted to focus in on recommendations 3 and 4. Many members will know that I actually do a fair bit of work helping people that struggle getting into employment with the DWP away from my day-to-day job. And one of the barriers that's often there is accessing the people doing part-time hours and the restrictions imposed by the limits put upon them by universal credit. To see this simple streamlining of the process and the increasing of the allowance will not only just be welcomed by those people seeking to do the most basic of hours and not be financially impacted against this, but it'll be welcomed by employers as well that offer flexibility to many people. The workforce today, you're no longer in the world of 9 to 5s. People work various shifts, have different sets of circumstances, and the last 2 years have particularly emphasised that. So I welcome particularly 3 and 4, streamline the process to make it easier for people to access the support, and the increasing of that tolerance to enable them to engage in the workplace even further.
Thank you. Councillor Hewitt.
Thank you, Chair. I also welcome this report. I think the target of any reduction scheme for council tax really has got to be geared towards those people who really need it, and it needs to be simple and effective and timely to make sure that should individuals need access to the scheme, then actually they can benefit straight away. I echo Councillor Robertson's comments, particularly proposals 3 and 4 will simplify and also will make this benefit easier to access. The fact that it did go out to consultation, albeit a relatively small consultation in terms of responses, and the result of the consultation, this was welcomed by those people who would be affected by it, suggests it clearly is a good thing. I fully support it. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jeremy, please.
Thank you. Completely agree with Councillor Robinson's point there. I think a previous version of this report, when a change was made before, confirmed that actually it was costing more in administration than what we were saving. So it's good for the customer and it's also good for the council. So it's a common sense approach. Just 2 points I just wanted to make, and it may be for Adrian Mills to answer later, but 3.5 details 123 customers are expected to pay more council tax. I just wondered if there was perhaps like an average amount of how much we're talking about. I'd imagine it's relatively small, but I would personally want reassurance that actually it's not a significant increase for people. And the second one is around the capital threshold at 2.2. And I was trying to think to myself why this would be a bad thing, reducing the capital threshold down, because £10,000 is not worth as much now as perhaps it was before. And normally you'd see a capital threshold increase, but actually we're putting it down. And I can't see a good reason why anybody with £10,000 in savings or whatnot should be receiving council tax support. So I do think it's a good idea. What I wondered though was whether there was any benchmarking with neighbouring authorities, because the big difficulty with having these sort of localised support schemes is when people move between councils, the support will vary. And somebody who comes from a council with a different threshold would move to Breckland and find themselves, you know, and probably wouldn't think to look what the council tax threshold is in that area. But I just wondered if there was any benchmarking and if we're in line with others, because it would make sense to me at least that having a similar level of capital threshold would be a good thing. So it's just a random question.
So yes, Terry, I will ask Adrian to respond in detail, but what I would say in answer to your second point, of course, ARP doesn't just deal with Breckland. We are an amalgamation of local authorities across East Anglia, as you know. And so this particular initiative will not just benefit residents of Breckland, but will reflect on all of the council taxpayers across, I'm sure. But I will ask him to come back to you on that. In terms of benchmarking, I'm sure that's been taken into consideration. As far as how many are affected, I honestly don't know the answer to that question. Alison has been given additional information. Whether that's one of the items she was given, I don't know.
Yes, sorry, Terry, I don't know what the average increase is, but I will find out for you.
Thanks. Councillor Borrett, please.
I wanted to just support this and 2 points really that just came out of previous members' comments really. They are, as Councillor Jeremy mentioned, to lower the capital threshold, but also removing the requirement to pay a tariff on savings over 6,000. So there is a benefit there, which previously wasn't mentioned. And on the point of people moving from one district council to the next, I quite understand why somebody would want to move from the city council where their bandee was £278 to Breckland, where it was only £98, would be a great saving. So I absolutely endorse his point, and you're quite right, it would be different for people if they moved. I also take on Councillor Cowan's point that this is something that ARP is an organisation that covers many district councils, so there are similarities for most of Norfolk. And I think Norwich City Council is now moving to use ARP. Is that correct?
In part, but not entirely.
Lovely, thank you. I've got Councillor Burt, then Councillor Jeremy, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I do support this measure, and the simplifications obviously are beneficial. And I think that this is going to be more important as the years go on, especially with the squeeze on incomes and cost of living increases. But I think it's also important that we have sufficient measures to ensure that the very limited resources that we have available are targeted to the right people. And I think predominantly they are. But could I ask what measures are in place to limit the benefit to those who may wish to try and game the system, or maybe not, or maybe just through circumstances? So, for example, under occupation of very large and expensive properties, or those perhaps that manage their financial affairs with things like trust funds, which may make them appear to have very low income, whereas actually they enjoy a very high standard of life. We need some robust measures in place, and I just wonder if you could just give some outline as to how we do that.
Again, Councillor Burt, what I'll do, I'll ask Adrian Mills to respond to that.
Thank you. Councillor Jeremy, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to add some clarity really to Councillor Borrett's point there. The comparison between different councils, I think, is important, because if you live in the utopia that is Norwich, of course, you are supported to 100% with your council tax. Just one of the many other benefits that you get from Norwich for having a higher council tax, proving the point, of course, that you get what you pay for. But if you were to move from Norwich and receive that level of support and move to Breckland, whilst you may save with your council tax being reduced, but not overall, of course, because you also have to pay for the parish. There are lots of things that you don't get, including a reduced level of council tax support. So the comparison is important.
Thanks, Councillor Jermyn. Of course, I'm sure that the 10.6 million worth of savings that City Council at Norwich have to face, which they announced at their cabinet meeting in October, has some reflection on the fact that they offer such difference in approach to support for their residents. But of course, that's a different managed council. And for here in Breckland, we've seen from the previous agenda report, we're ensuring that people have the ability to have help when it's required and to allow themselves to find a job, get a better job, and then get a career. And that's what we're doing through Councillor Clausen's team and working closely to ensure that industry is moving to Breckland and those who are already existing are expanding to create that fantastic wealth of job opportunities. And we said earlier when we met that actually employment rates in Breckland are immensely low, but your comments are noted about those rates of income and salaries. But of course, it's our responsibility across the district, work with colleagues to lift those up. In relation to the struggles we find, obviously this is our 9th year of the local council tax support scheme, and that's driven by us and our understanding. I'm sure that many colleagues in this chamber have dealt with the struggles of going on the DWP website to deal with income support, JSA and ESA, and Breckland, through our hard work and our partnership working across several councils, across several counties, ensure that our benefit system is simple, that it's easy to follow, and that it speeds up that ability to make those claims and get that process undertaken quickly and diligently. And the ARP team are well placed throughout the last 2 years, and previously that Breckland and ARP have been trailblazers and subject matter experts on behalf of government to ensure that the benefits scheme and any changes are heard at the highest level. And of course, we are still the only council in Norfolk who funds the Citizens Advice Bureau, who give fantastic revenue and benefit support. And our forward team, Councillor Burt, it has some of the highest rates of claims within the whole of the county and across the eastern region. But of course, on top of that, because we share a partnership across so many councils, we can get that specialist team who can work on through some of those more difficult cases. And as we begin to move forward, and Councillor Robinson presented previously when we were speaking about the customer contact review, we're doing that early intervention and using our data more efficiently, whether it's through our Rebs and Bens, our housing team, or how our residents interact with us, to ensure that we're supporting those in need today ahead of when we expect them to require that need in several months or even several years' time. Councillor Cowan, the LCTRS is a really important part of what we're trying to do. And as you can see today, we are continuously moving to make sure that we're supporting those residents in need and allowing them to find that the financial hardship they find themselves in is reduced, and ensuring that they don't get themselves into spiraling debt. And the LCTRS is exactly that. So there are no further questions from colleagues. I'm happy for you to remove the recommendations.
I move the recommendation, please. Then there are 4 of them. Take them on block. Cabinet recommends to full council the proposed changes to Breckland Council's local council tax reduction scheme 22-23. 1, reducing the capital threshold from £16,000 to £10,000 and abolishing the tariff income. 2, introducing a fixed rate reduction of £7.40 for non-dependents. 3, further streamlining the claim process. And 4, increasing the tolerance for universal credit data reassessments from £65 per month to £100 per month. Move the recommendation, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. That's then agreed. So move on to item 11 then, which is the Anglia Revenues and Partnerships minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, the 7th of December. Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Chairman. And really to underscore some of the points you made at the close of the last item, we had a very significant meeting on the 7th of December with all members of ARP. And as a result of that, we are doing more work as a joint committee to look at how we might take ARP forward. And that will focus on quite clearly some of the more significant matters that we've been discussing. We have, of course, a new head of ARP as well in Adrian Mills. As we said earlier, he couldn't be with us today, but he will respond to the questions that you've asked. And I would just ask you to note the comments in these minutes, but to reassure you that we are doing remarkable things. And if anyone wishes to see the detail, they're all there to be read. And as far as enforcement and fraud is concerned, 12 million quid is not a drop in the ocean, because that's the effect that ARP is having across the member councils. And for us here in Breckland, I think it's about $1 million for those in Norfolk. So thank you very much indeed. Note the minutes.
Lovely. Duly noted, colleagues. Thank you very much. So move on to item 12 then, which is the date of the next meeting. There's Councillor Burt.
Just, I thought this might be an appropriate place to bring this one up. A year ago, Cabinet were in the process of considering the Inomia climate report, and I understood that we were going to have annual reviews on that. So I was sort of expecting it to be on this agenda. But thinking about when the next meeting is, could I ask, is that going to be on the next agenda? When are we going to see this updated report, please?
Thanks, Councillor Burt. Out of politeness for you, I'll take that question because I don't normally take questions outside of the agenda. We haven't got the standard item on this agenda because we were doing budget setting and council tax and the LCTRS. I haven't got the forward plan in front of me, but I understand that we are commencing that work on a quarterly basis for the climate to be a standard item on our cabinet report. And I don't know when the first one will be, but I'm sure that Councillor Sherwood will be able to reply to if it is going to be the 7th of February for that item. So the date of the next meeting is Monday, the 7th of February 2022 at 9:30 in here, the Anglia Room. So that now formally closes the meeting at 10:41. Thank you very much.